2026 Xixili 148 scale MiG-15 fighter model kit build. I have always been a fan of vintage aircraft, especially the military jet aircraft that came out of the Korean conflict, which ran from June 25, 1950 to July 27, 1953. I thought the Soviet-built MiG-15 would be the perfect kit to start with. I found this new 148 scale MiG-15 fighter produced by Xixili for sale on eBay for $19.08 plus $8 shipping directly from Beijing, China. The full listing name was Xixili Model 148 LEE-61028-32 Chinese Fighter MiG-15 Model Kit. Oh, a sales tax of $1.96 was applicable as well. There is a drop-down menu allowing you to choose different paint schemes, or in this case decal themes. I went with the Korean War fighter aircraft scheme. Other choices were I purchased my MiG-15 model off of eBay prior to all the tariff posturing. This eBay listing claims that you will not have to pay additional import fees if you purchase this product that is shipped from Beijing, China, which is good to know. Unboxing. It took about 2 weeks for my Xixili 148 scale MiG fighter model kit to arrive from Beijing, China. It was well packaged and survived the long journey intact. Packaging. The graphics on the front of this model's box were top-notch, showing a MiG-15 with North Korean markings close up and in a dogfight. Opening the box revealed the sprue frames with all the parts still affixed to them. Included with the MiG-15 model kit, the sprues with all parts to build a model aircraft, display stand, decals, and assembly instructions. The assembly instructions are in pictorial format. No comprehension of the written Chinese language is needed. Painted red accents were included on the vertical tail fin. Assembly. Xixili has set the difficulty level of this model kit to 2 out of 5. All sprues were removed from their protective plastic bags for easy access. The Xixili 148 scale MiG fighter model kit appears to have good detail on the fuselage. And wings. I immediately noticed some scratches on one of the wings. It looks like the silver on the body parts has been painted on and not molded into the plastic itself. After noticing this, I was extremely careful with the handling of all parts. I used my Kaiweets wire cutters to remove parts from the sprue. Looks like the black parts were spray painted on the sprue as well. The actual plastic appears to be gray. I removed all the parts from the sprue for a single page of assembly. Lead wheel weights were also included with this model. I believe they were included so the MiG-15 model would properly balance correctly on the included stand. A single-edged razor blade was used to remove any excess plastic from the parts where they were connected to the sprue. My go-to model glue is Model Master liquid cement for plastic models. It is now branded as Testers instead of Model Master. This liquid cement has a precision metal applicator and doesn't have a strong smell like earlier glue formulations. The exhaust nozzle was glued together with liquid cement applied in 4 indentations. The 2 sections of the exhaust nozzle were then mated together. During dry fitting, I found that the control column did not fit into the hole in the floor. I used a pin vise to slightly widen it. The control column was then cemented in place. The cockpit was turned upside down so that the sides could be cemented in place. The lead wheel weight was installed as well. It has a self-adhesive backing. I reinforced the sides of the cockpit with another bead of model cement. The self-adhesive backing on the lead wheel weight wasn't holding it in place. I applied superglue to the backing, then used an alligator clip to secure it in place while it dried. Here was the completed cockpit. Model cement was applied to the last 2 ribs on the right side of the fuselage, and the exhaust nozzle was then installed. The intake splitter was secured to the front of the cockpit with model cement. The cockpit was turned over and extra beads of model cement were used to secure the intake splitter from the bottom. You could see the spots where the cockpit's parts were cut from the sprue. I touched those spots up with acrylic enamel flat black paint. Here was the finished result. Per the instructions, a second lead wheel weight was applied under the cockpit. Superglue was used to secure the lead wheel weight in place this time as well, as the adhesive on it was not strong enough. The cockpit/intake splitter assembly was dry fit into the right side of the fuselage. Model cement was applied to various places on the inside of the fuselage. Then the cockpit/intake splitter was installed. It was time to secure both halves of the fuselage in place. First, the rudder was placed on the hinge section on the right fuselage. The canopy also needed to be put in place. The assembly instructions show you how the two fuselage sides fit together. I applied model cement to several places on the inside of the left fuselage. The two sides of the fuselage were then pressed together. It's okay if there's a small gap in the bottom front of the fuselage. The air intake ring installed later will close the gap when installed. A neat feature of this kit is that the canopy slides back, exposing the cockpit. The last things to assemble were the landing gear and drop tanks. I only assembled the wing landing gear as my MiG-15 was to be displayed in flight. The assembly instructions provided a detailed pictorial for the landing gear. The last step was to cement the wheel well doors in place to the landing gear. I touched up the sprue attachment spots on the tires with acrylic enamel flat black paint, and the landing gear with acrylic enamel silver paint. The wings with ailerons, landing gear, and drop tanks needed to be assembled. Assembly instructions provided a detailed pictorial for the wings, but first the drop tank was assembled. The two halves were cemented together. Before the right wing was assembled, the ailerons and landing gear needed to be put in place inside the wing. Model cement was applied to several points inside the wing. Then the two wing halves were secured in place. Model cement was applied to the drop tank mount points. The drop tank was then attached to the wing. This process was duplicated for the assembly of the left wing. I assembled the front landing gear but never installed it as my MiG-15 model was in flight. The gun pack needed to be affixed to the bottom of the fuselage behind the front landing gear compartment. Model cement was applied to the gun pack tie points. Then the gun pack was installed to the bottom of the fuselage. Next, model cement was applied to the tie points for the nose wheel door. The nose wheel door was then installed to the bottom of the fuselage. The bulletproof windscreen needed to be attached to the fuselage. A thin bead of model cement was applied around the bottom edge. Then the bulletproof windscreen was affixed to the top of the fuselage. The engine air intake was installed at the very front of the fuselage. A thin bead of model cement was applied to the inner ring. Then the air intake was affixed to the front of the fuselage. I attempted to dry fit the left wing into my MiG-15's fuselage, but it would not slide in properly. I used sandpaper to lightly sand the tabs, and my pin vise to slightly open the openings in the fuselage. Model cement was then applied to the wing's tabs. And the wing was mated to the fuselage. The same steps were taken to mate the right wing to the fuselage. install the left and right tailplanes. Model cement was applied to the top and bottom of the tab of the left tailplane. The left tailplane was then affixed to the tail fin. The same steps were taken to install the right tail fin. I had issues where the ailerons would flap around and not stay in one position. As such, I secured them in one position with model cement. This model came with a stylish display stand. A small bead of model cement was applied to the struts tab, then it was installed into the base. The pegs on top of the display stand made with these two holes on the bottom of the MiG-15 fuselage. Here are pictures of the MiG-15 model attached to the display stand. Here are all the empty sprues and the extra parts, including the open nose wheel door and nose wheel, which were not installed as this model was in flight. I used Tester's acrylic enamel silver paint to touch up the sprue attachment spots on the fuselage. I regret not being more careful with my MiG-15's parts when handling. The silver paint Xixili used on the parts was very delicate and could be easily scratched. Decal application. Here is my decal application setup. A bowl of room temperature water is required for wet slide decal application. I cut the decals I was going to apply to the fuselage from the decal sheet. Upon some experimentation, I discovered that in fact the decals were of the dry application type. I just had to remove them from the sheet then apply them. I used my single-edged razor blade to help in the application. Black strips across both wings and the North Korean star roundel were applied to the left wing. Once applied, I did not attempt to readjust as the decals tear very easily. The rest of the decals were applied in the same manner. Here are some other early Jet Age military aircraft models I plan on assembling in the near future. Conclusion. The MiG-15 model would be fun to build for both kid and adult alike, and was relatively straightforward to put together. This model had good detail on the fuselage, wings, and cockpit. A downside of this model was that the parts needed to be handled with extreme care as the painted surfaces could be easily scratched. Thank you for watching this build of the Xixili 1/48 scale MiG Fighter model kit. Please like this post and subscribe to Rust Belt Vintage Toy Repair so that you're alerted to my future posts. Thank you.